release of Alien Romulus this past weekend, we officially have 9 films in the Alien franchise, if you include the AVP movies, which I do. For today's video, I'm gonna rank all of these cosmic horror flicks and would encourage you to put your own rankings in the comments below. Film is subjective and we all have different takes on these beloved movies, so let me know how you rank them in the comments below. Now let's get into it. Hey everybody, I'm Killjoy Jake, and instead of having friends, I have horror movies. Before we get into the rankings, I'd like to first thank the patrons that support this page. Without your continued support, I wouldn't be able to make these silly little videos all the time. Patreon and channel members just got to see a new episode of Horror Hot Takes this past week on Congo from 1995, featuring Terrifier 3's VFX artist Josh Petrino. It's my favorite episode of the exclusive series so far, and there are many more surprises on the way. Please consider signing up by clicking on the Patreon link in the description below or by pressing the join button on my page. Thank you all again for your support. Now let's get into the rankings. There aren't many franchise continuations that I would use the word hate to describe, but Alien 3 is one of them. It's a massive miss from an otherwise fantastic franchise after going through some severe rewrites that butchered the story. This movie starts off by blasting you in the face with the deaths of your favorite supporting characters from the previous film, like Newt and Hicks. I will note in the video game Aliens Colonial Marines, they retcon Hicks' death, saying this was someone else's body. Hicks was actually rescued by the Space Marines back on LV-426. This just goes to show how much of a problem child this movie is for no apparent reason. You could have just had Ripley's cryo chamber fall to this planet for any other reason with a xenomorph egg inside. Alien 3 is an absolute trash as it does feature some bloody deaths in between its nonsensical narrative. I also really dig that this movie introduced the idea that xenomorphs take on personality traits from its host, which is why this film's antagonist is very dog-like. The dog doesn't make it out of this one though, folks. Major bummer. I also really like the aesthetic of this film. It features some gorgeous and nihilistic feeling shots that are sometimes undermined by the lowball CGI. It's a shame that this movie isn't very good. I think director David Fincher is a master of his craft, with this movie being a wild outlier. His filmography includes Seven, Zodiac, Fight Club, and numerous other hits. I want to like Alien Cubed, but it commits too many sins to be forgiven, like ruthlessly ending the life of Ellen Ripley. I'm down for a good tragedy, but only if it's earned. I don't feel like this film deserved to do that to one of the best female protagonists of all time, but we did get this epic scene in the process. I consider myself a Requiem apologist, because if you could actually see this movie, it would be awesome. Requiem is likely most folks' bottom-listed movie in this franchise, but I think if someone with better knowledge on color grading got their hands on this one, more people would be into it. It's even more mindless than its predecessor, Alien vs. Predator, by taking the fight between the xenomorphs and the Yatyas to some random mountain town filled with typical slasher characters. That's a massive downgrade from a hidden pyramid in Antarctica. It's nowhere near as intricate as the Paul W.S. Anderson film, but just as cheesy and even more dark, in more ways than one. This movie starts off with a child getting face hugged. That's messed up, man. This film also features some impressive practical effects. The Predalien might feel like a fan fiction wet dream, but that's not always such a bad thing, especially here. I, for one, enjoy new creatures in this franchise alongside the beloved originals. Trust me, that won't be the last time we have that conversation on this list. Turn up the exposure a bit, and I think you have a decent slasher flick featuring predators and aliens here. Nothing can save the sophomoric story, but the effects are probably fantastic considering some of the scenes where I can actually see what's going on. That kitchen sequence is terrifying. There are many moments in Alien Resurrection where I just feel like the filmmakers were throwing the weirdest ideas at the wall, and whatever even remotely stuck, they ran with it. Personally, I love the human xenomorph newborn creature. It's a wonderfully disgusting design, and the birthing sequence is so upsetting. The cast for this one, not the characters specifically, is arguably the best from the whole series, featuring Winona Ryder as an artificial person, Ron Perlman, everyone's favorite Hellboy, and Michael Wincott, who does an excellent rendition of Flying Purple People Eater in Jordan Peele's Nope.
I said, Mr. Purple People Eater, don't eat me.
God, I love his voice. Resurrection really loses me with its Ripley clone. I get it, she's not supposed to be Ripley. But I hate that it's not Ripley. She's so out of character that it just feels jarring to watch this movie with the past 3 in mind. I also can't stand Joss Whedon's sassy dialogue. It has aged very poorly and makes certain moments of this movie unwatchable. I have a love-hate relationship with this one because it is fun to watch. The alien swimming around in the kitchen is a really cool sequence. What's with the lesser Alien movies having really good kitchen sequences? I just wish this movie tried to take itself seriously at times. The biggest problem with this one is that it feels like cartoon characters are facing off against the most terrifying life form in the galaxy. One of the strongest aspects to the first 2 films is how intriguing the characters are. To not even attempt to match that success here is really the last nail in the coffin. Prometheus is a movie I've come around to upon the release of Alien Romulus. It's a strange film because I believe it's competently made, but if you think about it, it doesn't really have any real implications on the rest of the franchise. Well, that is until now. As it stands though, it feels like a movie that was trying to world build the Alien franchise, which I respect, but I never felt that same terrifying feeling from the original flick until this movie's iconic ending. The rest of it feels frustratingly slow besides seeing Michael Fassbender giving a performance of a lifetime, and this engineer, wowie zowie. I'm coming around to Prometheus these days since all of that setup actually went somewhere in Romulus. More on that later, and I really dig the cast of this one. Charlize Theron, Noomi Rapace, Idris Elba, Guy Pearce, Logan Marshall Green, man, this might have a better cast than Resurrection. I just wish this movie didn't feel like a boring remake of the original Alien, but it does have some forgiving aspects. It ranks lower for me now, but maybe in time it shoots up the list a bit as Fede Alvarez hopefully makes another Alien film here soon. Fingers crossed that he casts Michael Fassbender next time to play the synthetic and, not repeat what they did in Alien Romulus. A major step up from Prometheus is Alien Covenant, which is probably a hot take. I was reluctant to see this one after not being crazy about Prometheus, but this movie delivered in my opinion. Covenant is everything Prometheus should have been, featuring a slurry of xenomorph-inspired creatures that lends itself to some terrifying moments throughout. It still has that philosophical angle represented by David's character, but with a heavier focus on sci-fi terror and action. It makes for a much better blend and effectively does things that Prometheus could only dream about. It features a lesser cast, yet better characters than Prometheus, and the airborne infection idea is one of the best from modern Alien movies. We also finally get to see a xenomorph at the end of this one, I don't care what the internet says. It's not all great though, the CG looks almost worse than Alien 3 here, and it does drag a bit in the middle. Snags aside, I think this film is the most underrated from the series. The evolution of David's character is so interesting to me, spending God knows how long cooking up the recipe for a xenomorph. I still wish we would have been able to see how that led into the first Alien, but I have a feeling there are still more films to come in this franchise. I'm holding out hope for the Prometheus and Covenant side of this franchise, especially after Romulus. Maybe you think this movie is dumb, mindless, or pointless, but I think it might be my most watched flick from either franchise it represents. AVP is possibly my favorite guilty pleasure movie of all time, as it pushes its PG-13 rating to the limit, with some gnarly effects and a super underrated final girl. The film has a ton of practical effects that are countered with some decent VFX. It's definitely better than some of the other entries on this list, to say the least. A lot of the characters are memorable, even if they are a little silly, and the fight scenes are blissful. I think this movie has some of the most iconic moments from either franchise, while also staying true to the lore from both sides as well. The predators are well represented as hunters, and the xenomorphs are more like the animalistic prey. I have to say, Alexa Woods, played by Sana Lathan, is a top 10 character from either franchise, and we need to start putting some respect on her name here. She's badass, resourceful, and survives some crazy negative temperatures in the third act of this one without a coat. She's even battling a xenomorph queen at the same time, and wins! Alexa is top tier, and y'all don't even know it. The latest addition to the Alien franchise did not disappoint. Fede Alvarez has made a film here that connects plot lines from previous movies into what feels like the main storyline from the first 2 films. And yet, even with all of that, it still feels like a standalone. The evil black goo from Prometheus and Covenant rears its ugly head here in an ambitious new way, while also playing some of the hits. The xenomorphs are barely in this one, which definitely sucks a little bit, but in place are some bigger swings. Believe it or not, the facehuggers really got to shine in this one, with one of my favorite favorite tension-building sequences of the whole film. I also love that Isabella Merced's baby turns into that f***ing thing. The shot where they introduce that thing is so damn scary. I loved it. While Romulus executes the human xenomorph hybrid better than Resurrection, I still think I prefer the original design. Romulus is the result of the fan within Fede Alvarez watching every movie in this franchise looking for a way to pull it all together. But also, it tells a standalone story that can be enjoyed by newcomers too. It's a brilliant film for utilizing every big aspect that this franchise has to offer while also making something fresh. Personally, I've never seen such an ambitious yet effective franchise continuation in the modern age of film. It's certainly not perfect, but it's an absolute blast that ranks third on this list, easily. The original Alien is an all-time classic. Written by Dan O'Bannon and directed by Ridley Scott, this film popularized darker space travel stories. Sure, you had some 50s B-movies that featured evil travelers from outer space and Dark Star from John Carpenter, but this movie was the one to really break the mold. Likely because of its relatable cast of blue-collar characters and ambitious creature design, Alien has been a multi-generational hit. As a kid, I loved the back half of this one that kicks off with the famous chestburster scene, leading into tension-fueled nightmare sequences with that drippy looking monster. As an adult though, I've learned to appreciate the setup with characters who are forced by the real antagonists of this movie, Weyland Yutani, to check out some cryptic distress signal. It's all too relatable after working for a few companies myself. We also got to see the beginnings of Ellen Ripley here, slowly becoming one of the most fascinating female protagonists of all time. I think her shine glows even brighter in the next film, but there's no denying her badassery here, especially in that third act. This movie is a masterpiece with a capital M. I truly think that depending on the day of the week, either Alien or Aliens could revolve the top two spots here. Today, I'm just fancying the sequel. Aliens features a great cast like the first movie, but I think they're more fun characters even if some of their setups can be a bit annoying. The back half of this movie shows you that some of these characters are more than just brawny meatheads. There's a little bit of emotion there, which I think is great. The Space Marines are a big departure from that first movie, showing that this franchise has always made some ambitious choices from the beginning. For those complaining about Romulus, y'all are forgetting about this one. That's all I'm saying. This is Sigourney Weaver's best performance as Ripley, in my opinion. Her most iconic moments come from this film, and to be countered by the character of Newt gives it that emotional side that has you rooting for these characters even more than in the first film. There's a brilliance to this movie that no other sci-fi horror flick has ever really been able to achieve since 1986. Yes, it is due a little bit to the setup from the first film, but it's mostly James Cameron's hardworking crew here that makes this one so damn special. This film was no easy feat, and it surely paid off. Like many films in the franchise, Aliens features a terrific supporting cast featuring Bill Paxton, Michael Biehn, and Lance Henriksen. It's impossible to pick a favorite here, but Vasquez, played by Jeanette Goldstein, might be the most underrated. I can put this one on any time and be totally satisfied with it. It's another masterpiece from this franchise that has stood the test of time. This is how I would currently rank these movies, but your list likely looks different than mine. Put your list in the comments below and let me know which movies you love or hate from this franchise. Before we wrap up today's video, I'd like to ask you all to subscribe to my gaming channel, GullGotha. I'm currently playing horror games over there, and once the spooky season is over, I plan on making that channel my focus for a little while. Go check it out and help me hit 1,000 subscribers. Maybe I'll even play some Alien games there. How would you all rank the Alien movies? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all again for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.